Good afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 19 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission systems. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss critical issues facing government and industry leaders in rolling out zero trust strategies and technologies. With me on today's show are Lamont Yarborough, Acting Deputy CIO, Chief Information Security Officer, Health and Human Services; Rob Thorne, Acting Deputy CIO and Chief Information Security Officer, Immigration and Customs Enforcement; Chris Wallace, Chief Information Security Officer, Program Executive Office, Defense Healthcare Management Systems; Michael Epley, Chief Architect and Security Strategist, Public Sector, Red Hat; Greg Carl, Principal Technologist at Pure Storage; and Paul Kirch, Chief Cybersecurity Advisor and Field CTO at Splunk. Well, believe it or not, we are 2+ years old with the Zero Trust Memo 2209. And I can't help but notice that we have two of the individuals on here that were acting deputy CIOs or are acting deputy CIOs and chief information security officers. I always say they make the best CIOs. Lamont, let's start with you and just talk about across the top. Where are you at a cabinet level with your zero trust implementation across HHS, which is absolutely massive?
It is. Look, and first, let me start by saying, as always, thanks for having me. I get this question asked a lot, and I always take the opportunity to level set those who may be listening with respect to the federated nature of Department of Health and Human Services. Of course, it's not just from an enterprise view. We can see a lot of things, but there's a lot of moving parts, and we may not always be aligned with respect to the pillars within zero trust all at the same time, so to speak. I mean, for instance, FDA may be working on focusing rather on one particular pillar versus, CDC, et cetera. But we've made, I think, a number of advances. I think just off the top of my head, we've successfully implemented our SUR capabilities and enabled, the automation of enterprise, threat mitigation and incident response activities. We've advanced the deployment of the TIC 3.0 architecture for, our cloud environments. We've completed the transition of HTTPS for all HTTP traffic, and we preloaded all .gov domains as HTTPS only in web browsers, and we properly aligned our secure access service edge, which eliminated legacy VPNs that have been secured. So I think we're making some headway.
A lot of cleanup there, and I love the last part of zero trust, which is the architecture, right? It's a framework where we can snap these pieces in. Well, we just heard from a cabinet level department. Let's talk about an operating component. Rob, I know you all have been on a tear over there trying to lay down the tracks and build that capability up. Give us a sort of a state of the state as to where you're at.
Yeah, like Lamont, we've made some really great progress. And I think similar to what he kind of mentioned there, it's a journey. It's never ending. We're still striving to make improvements. One of the things we've focused on is that system maturity model and making certain that we can, address each and every one of those pillars. We've done a great job of implementing, new procedures, new processes, creating zero trust policies, and then implementing technology. To name a few, one of the areas that we've really done well in, when I think of zero trust, I think of protecting data. We now have security tech where the data resides. Another area where we've made some really good strides has to do with our access sessions and having context behind those access sessions. So in other words, when we can make decisions now based on the posture of the device, based on the type of workload, and we can put some context behind the identities, whether it's a machine or whether it's a user. Another area that we've made some really good strides recently is with microsegmentation. So previous or prior to the big push with zero trust, we did a great job with our north-south traffic and understanding and protecting that. What we were weaker in was that visibility with that east-west traffic within the network. So now we have the visibility into what servers should be talking to what other servers and what ports and protocols should be used or shouldn't be used.
So important to implement that type of instrumentation and not let the bad guys get in there and just wander around and clean house, so to speak. Chris, I cited a couple of the CISOs and different roles, acting role. We know you were in a monster acting role, and now you're back focused exclusively on a massive responsibility area you have there as the CTO, now back as the full-time CISO. Give us a state of the state as to where DHMS is in regards to your zero trust journey.
Yeah, sir. Again, thanks for having me on. We're very similar to a lot of like cabinet level kind of pieces, right? So we have a lot of integration that we have to deal with. We have DHA as that larger fourth estate type agency, but we also have other federal partners. We have industry that we have to help work and integrate with. So for us, the progress that we do is how we're looking at the evaluation process, right? When we start to look at each of those pillars and you start to really drill down, how that macro and micro segmentation of your networks work, exactly where all the pieces and parts fit, how ICAM for us plays a very large role, right? The ability to look at what a PIV, say for VA, right, and how DoD CAC works, but also how those security groups work within the Active Directory structures, how they have to have access, because you may have a physician, and one of our success stories with looking at some of that credentialing items is FHCC, the Federal Health Care Center there in Chicago. We had to figure out how to allow and how to build out to where a VA physician and a DoD physician and nurses and staff would be able to access those same records, have a true point location, right? So if you take that and you look at how the pillars work, you look at how things work. We also have to look at, because we're global, right? So we have, when you look at ICAM, you look at, okay, you have a physician that may be in Chicago one minute, a military doctor, and the next minute they may be in Germany, right? Or they may have to deal with patients that are in Germany. So you have to really look and see how those type of credentialing really works and what meets that standard in those pillars, right? Because as you go down through this, you find a lot of nooks and crannies, we'll say, those little gaps, little things that you have to have people and sometimes some very specific talent to really drive through and fix those gaps, find those holes to make sure that you have that larger success.
We appreciate that sort of explaining that vast apparatus there and all those different nuances. Michael, how about at Red Hat? I think about Red Hat and I think containers. I think about all the other things you do. And then I think about the building blocks of zero trust architecture and how you all fit in there. Give us a top line across the state of the state, so to speak.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Building blocks, and we see that zero trust, and we often talk about it, and you hinted at as an architecture, a framework, lots of building blocks spread across all these pillars. And as a technology provider, we're looking at all those pillars, what capabilities, M2209 you mentioned, drive our decisions about where we're making those technology investments and how we're enabling these capabilities for our government agencies. Good example, you mentioned immutable workloads and containers there. A big part of the M2209 directive. Same thing with other technology capabilities like DNS encryption or supporting HTTPS, and in the zero trust context, that means MTLS and client authorization. So we can do that contextual aware access controls. And for us, it's identifying what those issues are and being able to pipeline those into our engineering activities so that we can enable those technologies, enable those capabilities for our end users, as well as making that easy to use. Adopting a platform-based approach that integrates those capabilities, makes those easy to use across the entire set of pillars and across the entire industry, working with our other industry partners to build, because no single vendor can do it all themselves, a platform for zero trust across different use cases, different integration points, and to adapt to the legacy infrastructure.
Critical to snap into the architecture as you're describing there. All right, Greg, how about at Pure Storage? I think about Pure Storage and the zero trust architecture, and then I think about the various pillars, and then I think about, hey, at the end of the day, the bad guys are looking for the data. And where is it? It's on Pure Storage, right? So tell us about how you all fit into this ecosystem and how you're using your different technologies to secure it.
Well, thank you, Luke. And essentially, when we look at the zero trust model, it is data centric. We move from the network centric to the data centric focus. And we've been that since day one here at Pure Storage, because everything we look at is how can we protect our customers' data? How can we not just, succeed for the mission today, but what's the mission tomorrow? So as we're seeing this more of a, enterprise-wide modernization for the entire federal space, we're trying to be ahead of the game by aligning to the pillars as possible. Now, obviously, from a data pillar, we're kind of in our sweet spot there. But ultimately what it boils down to is, because security is inherent in everything we do with our safe mode capabilities, with being able to have, FIPS as kind of table stakes for us, right? We look at security as not as sort of an exception, but as really table stakes for our customers. And that's why we've always tried to enable a product and solution set for our customers that can adhere to their policy versus vice versa, right? As we're trying to adapt to more and more brownfield, and even some cases greenfield, as our agencies are moving more and more towards new technologies, zero trust, and AI, we've talked about that as well. I mean, that's going to become an even bigger pillar. So being very data centric and security focused is kind of the core principle of what we do here at Pure.
Really do appreciate that insight. Paul, how about at Splunk? I think about zero trust architecture, and we think about heavy duty instrumentation, and that's what you all are all about. Tell us how you fit in and how you all are being used in this architecture.
Yeah, well, first of all, hats off to all the federal agencies that are represented here, because zero trust implementation is a massive project. It's obviously been in place since 2022, so it's an impressive feat for any agency to make progress. And where we're focused is obviously working very closely with our customers. And the latter two pillars around data analytics and visibility, as well as automation, are really where we can be most helpful to customers. How do we pull all the data together from all the respective pillars as it comes together and make sense of it for our customers? That's where we spend our time. I will note that just of late, in the past couple of months, NSA has come out with its guidance on data analytics and visibility, as well as automation and the execution of how that should occur. And we're right in sync with where the NSA guidance is. It's to me, at the end of the day, when I think about the broader kind of going up a couple of levels here and not so much into details, the only way we're going to stay ahead of the problem is if we have accurate data analytics and visibility into the data, along with automation, because we're not going to have enough humans in the end to keep up with the problem. So it's going to be data analytics engines like those of Splunk that are going to really help pull the pieces together for federal agencies or parts of federal agencies or those in the private sector. So we're do our best to stay in sync with our customers to help them with those, in particular, those latter two pillars.
Absolutely. I mean, this war is being fought, machine to machine. There's no doubt about that. So automation, very important. Instrumentation, very important. All right, we're going to talk about some specific examples. I'm going to start with you, Rob. I know you all are doing some very sophisticated things up there. You alluded to it, the microsegmentation, some real coarse grain, or excuse me, let's say fine grain capability with APIs, et cetera. You want to give us an example of an area that you'd like to highlight on your as you all go on your zero trust journey here?
Yeah, well, I mentioned the microsegmentation piece earlier, and that's an area that we're really
Huge.
Proud of, and that we've done a lot of great work in. Not a lot of agencies are there yet, and so that's very important.
And they need to be.
Well, they should. You should. It's very important. A lot of agencies focused additionally on identity, which is very important, and kind of leaving out that microsegmentation piece is something that I think should be next in line if you haven't attacked it. Really the other area I'm proud of, I brought it up earlier again, but it's really that ability to get that context behind the decision making, behavior-based decision making. So we're gathering a lot of different information, a lot of log data, telemetry, and we're able to pull that in, and we're now able to see a lot more of what's going on than we were previously. And I think that's really important, and something I'd like to highlight is we're actually able to make decisions in real time now about access to some of our resources. And to get to that point is a game changer for us, because now we can really see what's going on. We can make those decisions, and we can make certain that the people who need access to the data are getting access to it, and those that shouldn't aren't getting access to it.
Which is fantastic. So you're collecting an incredible amount of information, and then you've got some tools in place to actually make critical decisions based on that information that you're collecting real time. I love that, and I think it's super important as we fight this good fight, so to speak. Mike, how about at Red Hat? Can you give us a specific example that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I'll play off the theme of microsegmentation. This is something that we've used to drive some of our technology to enable better microsegmentation. What you mentioned and what I heard was automation and orchestration critical to achieving zero trust. Part of that's because, and same thing with real-time decision-making for behavior analytics, we're asked to make many more decisions much faster, and because it's all machine to machine, we can't disrupt our existing systems or operations in order to make that happen. So doing things like automation orchestration, absolutely critical for that, as well as things like microsegmentation, where we have many more connections that we have to monitor and create or destroy as needed. So that requires automation. It requires us to have the capability to segment our networks accordingly, understand what our network topology is and what it should be. Again, I'll go back to our platform approach. Because we provide a platform based on software-defined networks, we can manipulate those software-defined networks, the connections between those, tailor to the needs of things like zero trust and microsegmentation. Software-defined networks, software-defined infrastructure as a whole is integral to how we can implement zero trust architectures without that kind of disruption, as well as because it's software-defined network, pull in more contextual data. We can wire and plumb the software-defined network without deploying extra infrastructure, without deploying our more complexity or more legacy infrastructure or disrupting those systems. The software-defined aspect of how IT is moving today is also impacting lots of other areas. I mentioned in my last comment things like immutable workloads. Those kind of workloads allow us to do things like attestations and verification, or do things with those workloads in the DevSecOps sense, modify, mutate, or ensure that those workloads are equipped with the right sort of security controls, and again, validate and ensure those security controls are in place.
Yeah, and let's face it, if you're not doing this in a software-defined environment, you certainly can't automate it. And if you're not automating it, then you're just not fighting the right fight, so to speak. But we really appreciate that. And we appreciate everything everyone's doing. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about zero trust architectures. We're talking specifically about, well, specific examples. Lamont, let's throw it over to you. And if you want to highlight a specific example program as you all are enabling your zero trust journey.
Thanks, Luke. Again, with the size and complexity of mission set within HHS, one area that we think that we're making good headway in is with respect to our endpoint detection and response capabilities. We've vastly improved our security by the deployment, of a cloud-based endpoint, detection and response solution. Of course, with our good friends over at DHS and the CDN program, we've been able to achieve that. And of course, without much concerned. We've deployed that solution, and it provides us far better visibility into the security of our assets across the department. So the deployment of that EDR solution has resulted in a number of things at a tactical level that we feel best puts us in a stronger posture. We've reduced the network attack surface with our default deny block firewall rules. We've enhanced our security for USB and external media. We've implemented zero trust assessment scorings for each of our endpoints. And we've automated our threat intelligence enrichment via source. So we've made some strong headway in that space, I feel.
Yeah, I'm smiling only because I can't imagine with the Christmas tree that lit up when you all put that instrumentation out there, HHS being so massive. I mean, how many employees at HHS roughly?
I pretty much somewhere between, I've heard varying numbers, somewhere between 80 and 90,000.
Yeah, I mean, that's just
federal
massive.
employees and just as many contractors.
And all those operating components down there, just daunting task. So we applaud you for everything that you're doing over there, Lamont. All right, Paul, how about at Splunk? Can you give us a specific example?
Yeah, I think what really strikes me is the need to understand where your data is so you can ultimately bring it together from an analytical point of view. And I, so to speak, lived this firsthand. I was director of counterterrorism at the White House prior to 9/11, and we had the balkanization of intelligence data around what was going on with Al-Qaeda. And if you fast forward in time into where we are today and all the data that pours in to our networks as we try to track that, we have to have our technical fingers in the mix to bring that data together and have the appropriate visibility to gather the insights and the threat intel so you can ultimately, via machine, make good decisions as to what's actually happening on the networks. And so, often when I talk with a customer, it's, what challenges are you seeking to solve with regard to understanding what's in fact going on in your network? All of this links back to zero trust and the final two pillars. It links back to visibility and insights. It links back to automation. And as I said earlier in the conversation, I think it's important that we keep in mind that automation is going to be of growing import as we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we've been referring to here, automation, table stakes, as we like to call it. If you're not automating, you're done, as far as I'm concerned. Chris, how about at DHMS? Can you give us a specific example you'd like to highlight?
I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, and I think I agree a lot with the analytics piece of it, right? So I think that being able to really hone in and work with all the services, all the federal partners, look at all the analytics, and be able to actually build out a true design and the architectural changes that need to happen. That way we can keep on that master schedule that we have to maintain, all the reporting out to the DoD CIO office, everything we have to do to meet that 2027 mark, right? So for me, honestly, once you have that design, all the incremental successes that follow really build into that holistic success. The everything from the smaller engineering milestones in that automation functions, the retooling, all the other pieces that we have to do, because sometimes you'll find that one sector isn't as automated or capable as another. So we have to really bring them up, along with everything. So being able to actually recognize, build everything out, have a true design, really refine the architecture overall for that holistic marker for success, I think is probably where we're really driving towards.
Yeah, it really is a building block type of situation, right? You have a framework, you have an architecture out there, and you're putting these pieces and parts and moving your way up the value chain, no question about that. Greg, how about a Pure Storage? You want to give us a specific example you'd like to highlight? You've been on this embedded security capability and technology into your products. Give us an example of where this is really bearing fruit.
Absolutely. A lot of it has to do with, we've always had a platform that has being able to integrate with kind of any sort of application ecosystem, it was traditional virtual machines, bare metal, doesn't matter. That was, again, table stakes, right? From a data perspective, we have inherent features within there. But when we're looking into integrations, when we get deeper into the pillars of, hey, how are you doing handling multi-factor authentication? Are you just doing the bare minimum, or are you going above and beyond? Are we really meeting the standards, what our customers see from a security perspective? So our biggest push of standardization and being able to integrate with open ecosystems across, you name it, healthcare, DoD, traditional gov, does not matter, because we have to have that level of consistency. And I think that's the cool thing about the architectures and frameworks. Everything is going to be different. If the federal government's the largest, wide enterprise there is. You have logistics, you have healthcare, you have, defense, all these things. So
Law enforcement.
You name it, right? I could take your whole session just talking about the different verticals. But if we're looking at HHS or our friends on the DoD side, we have to be able to integrate to their standard. And I think that's huge. I love seeing that as a constituent of knowing that we're raising the waters and levels of expectation of security across.
Really do appreciate that. All right, we're going to go to top priorities for this year. Rob, we're going to start with you. What is in your performance plan? What is your focus for this year, for 2024 calendar year? What are you all driving for that you must get done? Top one or two?
Yeah, I smiled a bit because there's a lot in my performance plan this year. We've got a lot.
Yeah, I wasn't going to put you on the spot there, but I couldn't resist.
But I'll tell you, I'll pick one real quick, and it's about customer service, and it has a lot to do with zero trust. So from a zero trust perspective, when we look at success within our organization, one of the things that we want to do is drive towards reducing risk within the agency. We want to make sure that we're putting efficiencies in place. But the other thing from a zero trust perspective is we want to make certain that security is transparent to the user. In other words, we want to make an easy choice for the user. We want them to use our security. So from a zero trust perspective, we want to make certain that it's a good customer experience. And that's a tough one. And that's one that I have as a goal this year. And I think we're making progress. We're seeing where we've got good adoption of the security solutions that we're putting out there, and it's transparent to the user.
A good catch there, and very progressive. When you hear people say, security, and then you say customer experience, oftentimes you get the type of thing, but you elegantly explain that there is an absolute overlap there and a dovetail that makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate you highlighting that and getting some focus on it. Mike, how about at Red Hat? What's the focus for you all this year? What's the demand signal that your customers are asking you to deliver on?
Well, we have to kind of look and prognosticate 2-3 years ahead in order to make the engineering changes and develop the technology needed to do things like reduce risk or drive efficiencies. One of the things I'm going to focus on this year, and our engineers focus on this year, is I'll call it the policy aspects of this. One of the things that we've gotten good at in Zero Trust is the basic security controls, working on single pillars. What we're not doing well right now is reusing the same capabilities, reusing the same approaches across those pillars, across those platforms, across those domain use cases. And part of that is because we have very singular or special purpose policies and policy enforcement across our architectures. We're looking to find and build a generic framework for doing things like defining our zero trust policies, ones that can be broadly applicable and allow the consistency of contextual based access across these pillars and across technologies, across these use cases that we can then use to derive those specific and single purpose controls that can be enforced. And what we see in like these maturity models is lots of places where policy is called out in those areas. And we're going to use that as guidance to figure out what policies do we need to integrate and how we can integrate those together. And these are important because they're going to drive those building blocks that we're going to use to assemble these zero trust architectures across these different domains and reuse those components across those. Again, driving efficiency and driving consistency for access control.
Repeatable capabilities, certainly very important in order to drive those capabilities out there to those customers. Chris, top couple of priorities for you this year at DHMS.
Again, it's kind of in that same boat, right? We're pretty broad. We really got to make sure that we can adapt to a large customer base. But I think really looking at some of the pillars that really drive more towards our really unique program management offices that we have. So the data security mindset, right? Not only improving and ensuring that data security is there, but also increasing the data literacy, right? Making sure that people understand what that data means, how to protect it, how it integrates into the larger picture for security, the automation and orchestration pieces that go along with that. Because we deal with everything from operational medicine that deals with theater components all the way to the larger hospitals. We have all the different services, VA. So we have to make sure that as we deal with data, as we deal with that security, that we're not impeding the missions, but at the same time we're meeting the mark and exceeding that mark when it comes to zero trust. That ties back into network security structures. That again, the automation, being able to pull those analytics near real time and be able to make those risk decisions to again satisfy those zero trust requirements, but at the same time expand the speed and capability of our mission overall. I think is where we're really headed for the next year.
Love the fact that you are able to unlock those capabilities and really sort of work your way up that again, that value chain. Paul, how about at Splunk? Top priority for you all over there for this year?
Well, again, number one is stay in sync with our customers and where they are in their journey of bringing in zero trust. I think it's really important that we work closely with our customers. The other piece that I think is important to us right now, where I think we can be a benefit to all of our customers, is, as I think many know, Cisco acquired Splunk in the past year. And it's how do we work better together, Cisco and Splunk, and what benefit does that bring to our customers? And I think we're going to find in the coming years or a year or so that we're going to see the ability to integrate telemetry from Cisco's networking gear into Splunk, and I think it's going to give all of our customers, federal customers, or those in the private sector, a lot more insight into what's actually going on. And once again, I think it's imperative that we're able to automate that insight as much as possible to give like all the people here from federal agencies the maximum amount of insight and understanding of what's actually going on in their networks, bringing about that automation, that visibility that is key to the two, if you will, the sixth and seventh pillars of zero trust.
So critical to have that proper instrumentation so that these folks can fight the good fight. Lamont, you're on the top of the aircraft carrier called HHS. What's your number one priority this year?
We're in perpetual researching and testing solution mode, right? We're testing solutions for things as varied as data discovery, classification solutions, encryption solutions, always encrypted, DNS, phishing resistant external MFA, and the list goes on to include ICAM and others. And of course, back from a zero trust maturity perspective, I've stated publicly in a number of engagements that we have a zero trust working group, and that group will continue to identify unfunded requirements common to all the areas across the department. And we'll continue to evaluate all the solutions that I've mentioned and others to kind of try to achieve at least some levels of cost avoidance and, strength and combined, buying power, right?
Sure, and rack and stack those priorities and make sure you're focusing on the biggest bang for the buck. So we really do appreciate everything that you're doing over there. Greg, how about at Pure Storage? Number one priority focus for you all this year?
So we have some really interesting features that are kind of doubling down on our stance on security. So One feature we have came out is called secure multi-tenancy. And really what that is going to enable for our customers is have a true, completely logical separated realms within their data storage environments. So it's just a new feature we're adding into our data storage and management platform that is giving our customers a sense of true isolation when required, but also giving that sort of future-proof aspect. Some other things, some other enhancements, making sure that we're getting in line from a network micro-segmentation, but also from an encryption perspective. Hey, the data that I may be sending between my sites to the cloud, is it encrypted in flight? That's something we can do with our platform now. So we're making sure and leaning into the more proactive approach of looking at how we can help our customers mitigate risk. I mean, we've been doing that for a while with Safe Mode to help mitigate ransomware impacts and mitigate that blast zone. But at the end of the day, it's all about improving the features and making sure as we're bringing these features in, they're non-disruptive and they're completely transparent to our customers. Because, when you have 15,000 to 150,000 users, disruption is not an option, but security is, again, has to be paramount everywhere across the board.
Really do appreciate that. I'm ecstatic that we're able to get to this question, which is lessons learned. And I see you all, both the agency and the partners, as the vanguard here. Chris, we're going to start with you. Top lesson learned as you've gone on this journey that you'd like to impart that wisdom out to the community about, hey, you need to remember this.
A lot of what we do already, especially
Sure.
with DoD, with risk management framework, with a lot of things like that. If you have a strong base, right, you have a good resilience and survivability base to what you're doing and what to build from, you're able to really work through a lot of those 91 activities a little bit faster in some cases, but it also gives you an easier pathway to see the visibility and the changes, right? I think that has a lot to do with it. One of the other lessons learned is, again, not all credentials are equal, right? You have different nuances and different systems and different capabilities that they require a lot of things. So it's, being able to manage and understand where all of your players are and how they fit into those pillars, how they fit into the overall holistic capability for you to be able to reach that successful zero trust marker is an important thing. But I would still say that the resilience piece, right? It's understanding that as you build this up, as you work through these pillars, improving the resilience of your systems, being able to work in austere environments, being able to really make sure, in our case, that the DoD, the warfighter, all the medical technicians, everyone is able to do their job at any given time, I think is important for us to look at it from that small little starter seed, right? So to us, it was very important that we looked at where we came from first, right? Not, I heard somebody say earlier, everybody wants to kind of gravitate towards that ICAM piece first, but if you don't evaluate and don't know where you start from and how resilient you already are, then where do you measure? Where do you go from for there? So I think that piece of it is probably the biggest lesson learned for us.
Fantastic. And we really do appreciate you imparting that wisdom. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about zero trust architecture. Specifically, we are talking about lessons learned. So I absolutely love this question. Greg, I want to ask you, Pure Storage, you're out there implementing this capability across the ecosystem. Top lesson learned that you all have discovered.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I look at it from the lens of sometimes customers don't understand the solutions they already have in place. They're checking some boxes, but is it really future-proofed? And in some cases, we just go back and look at a customer's environment as, you're doing encrypted replication. You have immutable data across the board. And in some cases, it's, heck, we didn't even know we were doing that. So we're ahead of the curve. So it's really along the lines of making sure our customers understand, number one, what they have in place today with their data services management platform with us, and sometimes identifying the gaps. Maybe sometimes it's getting in line and aligning our products to things they would like to see outside of just data services. What about from a security framework perspective? Now, we've talked about some of that earlier, but ultimately what it boils down to is, because we're a software-driven platform and data services management, we have a lot of flexibility. We're pushing out updates monthly to be able to iterate and push patches as quickly as possible to making sure our customers are up to date with security patching vulnerabilities as well.
Really do appreciate that insight and imparting that wisdom on this community. Rob, how about at ICE? I look at you all and I see you all as very progressive out there, quite a bit in front of a lot of these other agencies. You've got to have a top lesson learned, one or two, that you can give a heads up to these others that are trying to get where you all are.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a number of lessons learned. Early on, one of them was the education piece, getting people to understand what Zero Trust was and what it wasn't. And we're continuing to do that. That builds momentum within your program and enables you to get more resources potentially because people understand what you're doing. But the biggest one that we learned, which is very interesting from a security perspective, from an IT perspective, we always like to use technology to fix things. And oftentimes we always think, well, what is it going to do for us instead of the customer itself? So one of the things we learned was technology should be the last item on the Zero Trust agenda. So what I mean by this is put your people and processes first. So map your processes and your business use cases first, and then select the technologies to then support those use cases. And again, that goes back to what I said earlier, which is you want security to be an easy choice for your users. And to do so, they want to use those technologies that you're putting in place.
Good catch. And we really do appreciate you imparting that wisdom on this community. Paul, how about at Splunk? Top lesson learned.
Well, if I may, I think there are three that come to mind, and I can go through them very quickly. One is to realize that Zero Trust is a cultural shift, period, and how we approach security. It's an ongoing effort to transform how we operate security. And you think of life before Zero Trust, and it's a pretty dramatic change. And that leads to, the second point, which I think is really important. And, we have several agencies here on the call. Collaboration is key. Agencies don't need to, if you will, work independently. They can work collectively to solve problems. And the third area where I think is important is to understand is, for agencies to put data to work, understand where your data is, bring it together so you can have maximum visibility. Those are the three areas that I think really stand out to me as to, how do we continue to excel in implementing Zero Trust.
Collaboration, very clutch, and we really do appreciate that. Lamont, at a cabinet level, top lesson learned that you all have discovered.
I think Paul picked my mind right before he uttered most of what he uttered. Zero Trust is absolutely a cultural shift, and that part of it is meaningful because irrespective of all the talent, technical and otherwise, that you have in your teams, it's requiring folks to kind of think a little differently than what they're used to, right? And sometimes that's hard. And that is the definition of the cultural change that occurs in trying to achieve, this paradigm. At the end of the day, especially for, an organization as large and as diversified mission sets as this, it takes a lot to get this done. This is hard. It's complex. It's comprehensive, and it's a game-changing, architecture. In our experience, I think objectively, some would say that the data pillar is probably the hardest to achieve. Again, especially as a federated agency, it's kind of impossible to start by just trying to just inventory all our data. So, we focused on this notion of, trying to get an accurate count of our identities and our devices, focusing on how they interact with, the data we protect. And you don't have to do this alone. Collaboration, I think, is key. We have many subject matter experts here who do excellent work in many facets across the agency. And we've been fortunate enough to create an atmosphere of collaboration through our Zero Trust Working Group and through virtual event platforms like data-wide tech exchanges where we can hear success stories and learn from each other's experiences.
Very complex environment, very expensive environment. I really appreciate the fact that you're bringing that community together, racking and stacking this capability and leveraging that so you can get the stretch your funding out to the greatest extent possible. So we really do appreciate that. Michael, how about at Red Hat? You all are striped across the interagency. I'm sure you've seen it all. Give us sort of the top lesson learned that you all have discovered.
Well, it's hard to extend all the comments and great comments from all the other panelists here, but I'll echo and share many of those things. Maybe on a more tactical level, we talked about a cultural shift. Part of that cultural shift is in Zero Trust asks us to do things differently. And that's changing this idea of building better walls. This is a quote from Sean Connolly I love, building better gates. And it's a different mindset. Unfortunately, we have a lot of tools and existing processes, and speaking of people and process, that are tailored towards that older mindset. And we both have to adapt to and push that older mindset to think in Zero Trust terms, but also work within that. I'm reminded of the DoD overlay for the NIST 853 controls that was recently released. And this is the kind of thing that, well, our existing processes are tailored to working with overlays, working with compliance controls and systems like that. And we need to also acknowledge that, work within those existing systems, because that's where our mindset, our tools, many of our processes currently and still live. And while we're continuing to change that and rebuild the airplane in flight, we need to work with those existing systems. And I think it's important to do that because that's going to allow us to make progress within those existing constraints while we're trying to change things.
Really do appreciate that. And speaking of progress, we're going to fast forward 2 to 3 years. It's 2027. Paul, I'm going to ask you at Splunk first, what's it going to look like in 2027? What are you all focused on that you'll be rolling out in that time frame?
2027 is not too far away.
It's not.
It happens to be kind of like the target of where DoD is really trying to bring in Zero Trust across the board. But I think it's continuing to battle the balkanization of data, to bring that data together and ultimately put it to work. And it should be a seamless operation. Well, I would argue it must be a seamless operation to bring data and telemetry together to put it to work for federal agencies or other customers. We have to have that insight from what's going on in our networks in real time. And that's where I think, organizations like Splunk, carry immense responsibility to work closely with customers and ensure that, they're getting what they need. And it's not just, if I can expand a little bit here, it's not just security data per se that's important. If you expand the aperture into operational technologies that we are all depending upon, we need to sweep that into the mix as well. So we have a synoptic understanding of everything going on in the network, so we can identify those patterns rapidly and return something to our customers so they can make decisions quickly where important.
Really do appreciate that insight, Greg. How about at Pure Storage? Fast forward 2027, we're looking around. What's it going to look like at that point? When I pull up the Pure Storage catalog, what are we going to see?
Well, you're going to see a lot of the same in regards to simplicity and overall operational efficiency, right? Because one of our core pillars here at Pure is making sure that whatever we do for our customers, we're trying to align what I call the triangle of operational excellence, right? The people, process, technology, I think Rob had mentioned earlier, because as long as we can make the technology seamless, integrated, and really future-proof, this is really enabling a lot for our customers. On top of that, you're going to see a lot more collaboration working with our partners like Red Hat, like Splunk, for true end-to-end solutions that all have the same standards and capabilities across all 5 pillars. So always keeping our eyes and ears open open for what our customers are looking to the different zero trust models that are being laid out in frameworks today, but always innovating and always helping our customers iterate as quickly as possible, but maintaining that security posture.
That plug and play, very important, and we really do appreciate that. Michael, Red Hat 2027, what can we expect?
Well, I've always advocated and suggest that zero trust has a huge amount of business value. And I heard something earlier about balkanization of data. One of the things that we've done is build these security walls around our systems. And that really inhibits the ability to share and really extract value from the data that we want. And I heard it's not just security data. Well, we can extract value for implementing security capabilities. Absolutely, we want to do that. But the real value is zero trust will allow us to manage our data in ways that allow us to trust the downstream and other uses of that data and allow us to build new value streams from that data. Better operational data at the tactical and strategic sense, as well as better data so we can do things like customer service better. And these are the kind of things that zero trust is going to enable. And in our new, and I haven't heard AI yet, but I'm going to throw that out, AI world, right? AI is data driven right now. If we want to capitalize on AI and build AI and AI driven systems, we need to unlock that value. It's an insatiable beast. It needs as much data as we can get. And the better we can unlock that data with confidence, and zero trust is going to enable that, the better we can extract those value streams. So in a few years, as our zero trust maturity gets to the point where we can now safely trust our data outside of the bounds of our own walls, and that it won't get misused or leak, then we will be able to unlock that. We will really be able to supercharge our AI and future data-driven systems and unlock that business value. And that's the vision I have and why zero trust is so important to it.
Fantastic, and we all look forward to that. Really do appreciate it. Chris, if I'm a doctor over in Germany, I plug my CAT card in, am I going to be able to pull the records up in Virginia? Is it going to be seamless? Is it going to just be nice and crisp and clean and user-friendly?
That's always the goal, right? We want to make sure that it's clean. We want to make sure it's efficient. I think part of that is the retooling aspect. So by 2027, having a lot of the retooling, everything from the CSSP all the way down to the dynamic needs of the PMOs, whether it be those next phases and iterations for MHS Genesis, whether it be operational medicine pieces that go out to the COCOMs and the warfighter, whether that's just our standard evaluative processes, our policy development, how we look at and able to enrich the user identity data, right? So that we can turn around and in that larger data structure, be able to dynamically ensure that all the proper tagging and labeling is done, making sure that everything is usable, right? Because I agree with the aspect of we do secure data a lot. We want to have that highest level of security and capability, but we also want that highest level of usability. So we have to find that balance, and being able to do that in an automated fashion, and the ability to really make it to where it's whether using an AI or an ML system, or whether using another piece, that we can guarantee the security of it. And the resilience of it, like I talked about earlier. It's one of those things that I think in the next few years, and because we have to have all this done right by 27, because we've got 61 more advanced activities that we're going to have to meet by 2030, 2032. So it's we have to really make sure that we're on that process for the automation. We're on the process for identity management, and really push the dynamics and the capabilities forward as cleanly and as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, no doubt. It's 2027, marker in the sand. But we're never done, right? It's a journey, as I think we all talk about. Rob, I'm a freshly minted agent. I'm coming out of the academy. You're handing me a firearm. You're handing me a badge. You're handing me a laptop. You're handing me a mobile device.
Mm-hmm.
What's that experience going to look like? Am I going to be able to do everything I need to do from a mobile device at that point? What's the expectation 3 years from now, from where you sit?
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about data today. And of course, when you think about data, securing data is the heart of what zero trust is about. And I think my vision is that we need to move towards more of a data-centric security operations model, one in which we use we collect data once and we use it in many different ways. Overnight, we went from collecting about 2.5 terabytes of log data to almost 14 terabytes. We saw a 600% increase overnight.
Wow.
So we've got to intelligently use that data. Data will tell you a story. You just got to be able to get it to the right people at the right time. And that's something that we're focused on over the next 2 to 3 years. How do we do that? And how do we get that data so we can make the right decisions?
We really do appreciate that, and the laser focus on ultimately it is in fact all about the data, right? So we really do appreciate that, and I know that every ICE individual looks forward to that. Lamont, fast forward 3 years, you've got a lot on the plate over there at HHS underway. What when you look around 3 years from now, what are you going to expect to see? Well, what's your anticipation?
I think I had mentioned earlier, and some of my colleagues who just spoke kind of said the same. I want to jump on the data bandwagon, right? So when you think about the pillars, and again, I've stated from everything that I've seen, read, and heard, and executed, et cetera, the data pillar seems to be, the hardest. So how we harness a strategy, in my mind, it requires a governance strategy, and it just can't be, security or IT folks trying to move this forward. It's going to take a community of folks. It's going to take stakeholders. It's going to take data owners. It's going to take the CDO to kind of come together as stakeholders and establish the data governance strategy that can inform how you secure the data within the zero trust journey. So I'm hopeful that within the next 2-3 years that we kind of spend some energy in trying to crack that nut, if you will, so that we can knock this effort out of the park.
Really do appreciate that. And yes, absolutely, the focus is on the data. Just cataloging the data is a massive task in its own right. So we appreciate the journey that you all are on, and appreciate all of you for everything that you do and taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on this program. I'd also like to thank the sponsors for supporting us on the show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make the program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every single month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, which is part of the Federal News Network.